let's get started. But before we do, as always, I want to give you a little bit of a thought starter, and really just to get you, thinking about it, focused. Some of you might just be tuning in now. Maybe you're still making your lunch, getting your sandwich, your drink. So just take a moment to have a quick pause and think about this for a moment. Now, today's session is all about helping you create a home. That's what we're here for. And the reason why we do this is because time and time again, I see the same problem that everyone is suffering from, or at least have suffered from at some point over their time. That is, how do you buy a home that you can afford, that is right for you, that will add long-term value to your life without making a mistake? Pretty simple proposition, but there's a lot to it. And it can be really, really tough for a lot of you out there. And, buying a home is one of the biggest investments, one of the biggest purchases you will ever make in your life. It's not like your traditional online shopping. You buy a new jumper, pair of pants, a shirt, suit, dress, whatever it is, and you got 30 days to return it, get a full refund, or at least get some kind of credit. Buying a home, it's there, it's big, it's costly, and you can't just return it. So you want to make sure that you get these things right. So what I want to do today is I want to help identify the solution and how you can overcome that fear, how you can get past all of those roadblocks that might appear in the way, and really how you can start building up that knowledge, how you can start building up systems and processes to help you overcome that problem, not only today, but in the future. So that solution, it isn't a simple one-hit wonder that you can do once and it fixes everything. It's really about a mindset, a framework, and understanding. So what I've done over the last 2 decades is I've really boiled it down to a very, very simple 3-pillar framework, okay? So there are 3 key pillars that you need to understand and you need to be able to leverage, and you need to have systems to help you find that right home and continue to get value out of it. So number 1 is find. So you've got to find the right home. It's pretty straightforward. I think most of us sort of understand that concept, but that's typically where we end. Now, in today's session, as we get into a little bit more, I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. So I'm going to move forward to pillar number 2, which is finance. Now, one of the great things about real estate and homes is that it is relatively straightforward to borrow money from other people. So that's the great thing when you can use other people's money. You can really leverage into something much bigger and more expensive than you traditionally could afford on your own. So whether that be by borrowing money from a bank, borrowing money from mum and dad, perhaps buying in partnership with a family member, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, you can really leverage other people's money to get yourself into a home. But if you don't get the financing right and you don't continually review it, that can make the difference between being successful and really enjoying that home and struggling and finding things a little bit difficult. So really, really important that you understand pillar number 2 because it's often forgotten. Now, pillar number 3 is manage. Now, those of you that are investors on the line will traditionally be thinking about, oh yeah, do I need a property manager? How am I going to look after the tenant? How am I going to find them? How am I going to collect the rent? That's great, but manage is more than that. That is how you're going to manage everything to do with that home. So whether you live in the home or it's an investment property, what are you going to do in terms of maintenance? How are you going to manage the amount of time that's involved? So, typically we see, time and time again, there are people that work really, really long hours and they brought a home with the vision that they were going to spend their weekends upgrading the home, adding on new homes, renovating it, because it looks so easy when we all look on TV. But they're tired, they've got other family commitments, and they want to just relax. So invariably, it ends up being the completely wrong home for them because it is a rundown, and they would have been much better suited getting something that was just ready to live in, that they could enjoy, and they could go and do other things with their free time. So really, really important that you understand that concept of, not only your own time, but how you're going to work through all of those. So if you remember, find, finance, and manage. It's a pretty straightforward 3-pillar framework, okay? But you need to know more about each of those pillars, and you need to know how they work together. And what you need to do is you need to continually review this and go through and through. So it's something that shouldn't just be left. You've got to continually review it, look at it, go forward, and make sure that you're refining and really drilling in on the pillar that will make the most benefit to you at that time and best understand it. So hopefully by now you're relaxed, you've got your feet up, you've got your sandwich. What I want to make sure is that you will get the most value out of today if you really focus in. So turn all your distractions off, turn your phone upside down, drill in, get rid of that pesky coworker if they're trying to chat to you about the latest thing on Facebook, or invite them to join in and watch with you. We're going to go for about half an hour from here. So it's not a long time, but what I know is that those that focus, give us their undivided attention and get involved are the ones that leave today's session really feeling that they added a ton of value and that they were really, really being able to move forward productively from here. So I do really encourage you to focus, turn on your cameras, switch off all your mobile phones and so forth, and just drill in and focus. So today, we're going to continue to follow the same framework we do. So first up, I'm going to spend about 90 seconds. I've been keeping ish within that timing and give you a quick rundown of what I've seen happening around the countryside. Then section 2 will go for about 20 minutes. That's where we're going to go behind the scenes and drill into these couple of key pillars and some of the things and strategies and tactics that you can do to better understand how you can translate that knowledge into creating that perfect home for you. Then at the end of the show, for about 5 minutes, I want to just wrap up and really outline the path to success. So, what's next? How do you take what we've discussed today, perhaps what you've seen in previous episodes, and move that forward so that you can slay the problem that we talked about and move forward confidently and successfully with creating that new home. Now, just before we move into section 1, I just want to let you all know that ultimately today is all about helping you create a home. That's what we do here at Salvo. We've got a ton of different businesses that we're involved in, but ultimately they've all got that same single focus about helping you create a home. So it doesn't matter whether you're a first home buyer, you're a seasoned investor with 4 or 5 investment properties, or somewhere in between. There is value in it for you today. This framework is important and will give you the structure and guidance no matter where you are on that ladder. So I really encourage all of you to stay online and focus and give us your undivided attention. Okay, enough of the introduction. As I said, I'm going to give myself 90 seconds. I'm going to run quickly around a few of the key topics, and any of those that are important we will drill into. So I'm going to have this timer down the bottom. You can keep me to it and the screen will stop. So time is on. All right. So the first thing I've seen is interest rates. We've been talking about it for a while. It is now pretty clear that most, or I think all of the 4 major banks are in agreement that interest rates will be going up this year, which is against what the Reserve Bank has been telling us. It just really depends as to how much and when. But I think it's really important that you understand that and how that might impact you. Now, if you've been listening to us over the last 18 months, you would have taken out a fixed rate, so you don't have to stress too much for at least the next year or 2. The difference a year makes. What a change it is, the property market leading up to Easter last year versus this year. Still been a lot of strong sales, but we were really building momentum last year, and it was crazy because there was a limited amount of stock. We now got a ton more stock on the market, but we're still seeing really, really good results. But I think we're finally starting to see the FOMO and the excitement and the desperation of people ease up a little bit. CBD apartment rents are set to surge even higher. Jack's going to come on in a minute and run us through that in a bit more detail, so I'll skip over that. First home buyers running out of options for government help. We know that that's one of the key pillars of both governments, is to help first home buyers get in a home. But realistically, with a lot of these schemes, the caps in terms of the price that you can buy are pretty low. So there's not many homes that you can buy for that. Lastly, a good property manager is essential. We'll run through that in a bit more detail. Auction results. We've run out of time, but I do want to just quickly touch on that. 68.7% clearance rate nationally. It was the busiest weekend of the year. We had a total of just under 4,000 homes go to auction. Obviously, it is Easter this weekend. That's why we saw the big thing. I mean, Melbourne, almost 2,000 homes. That is a huge weekend. And Sydney, just under 1,500. Respectively, we saw 65% and 68% clearance. So for those of you that are worried that saying the market's dead, it's dying, it's fallen off a cliff, it hasn't. It's been pretty strong, but there's no doubt that things are starting to slow down a little bit. I just want to quickly touch on as well, realestate.com put out this statistics in terms of the volume of homes that are sold. They just put out the latest update for the last 4 weeks. This green or turquoise line that you can see here is showing for 2022. Red is last year, blue is 2020, and the dark grey or black line is 2019. All I want to say is that we're still tracking to a very, very strong start in terms of the volume of homes that are being sold. So those of you that are worried that some of these statistics are based on a very, very thin market transactions, that's not the case. We're seeing record numbers of homes being sold. So I don't think that there's cause for alarm at the moment, but definitely, be a little bit more cautious than perhaps people were being this time last year. Okay, that is it. I think I kept relatively well in terms of time. I now want to move into section 2. So I'm going to get Jack to come up now. And firstly, I want to talk about the rental market and how it's looking. We've touched on this for at least the last 2 years, how tough it has been in the inner city market. So, Sydney and Melbourne have really, really done it tough. Rents have been down significantly. But guess what? Whilst we're still getting record numbers of coronavirus cases every single day here in Melbourne and Sydney, it's forgotten because life is going back to normal. Migration is starting up again. The students are starting to be allowed back in. And we're already seeing that quickly translate into some good, strong, solid growth in terms of rents starting to happen. But most importantly, vacancy rates are getting right back down. So I think we're really setting up for a good year. So Jack, come on in.
Hey, James. Nice to meet you again.
Good. Now, you've been studying the numbers.
Yes.
We're having a quick chat about it now. I've got here the latest table. Just give us a quick overview. What's happening in the rental market? Why are you so positive, and why should all of our listeners that are a bit worried, or perhaps cautious investors over the last 24 months, why should they be seeing this as a positive time and be getting really excited about it?
Yes, like the same as last week, we had a review quarterly because now we're in April, so we finished the first quarter of the 2022.
Yep.
Last week, I think we had a review of the property value, obviously the market, the price.
Yep.
This week, I think we should really be review about the rental market. Having looked at the report for the first quarter of the 2022, this is the number, 2.6% increase on rental nationally. And then we had a look, Sydney, Melbourne, all the major capital city, almost the positive increase. And
Now, Jack, this is, I love data, but this is a bit hard. Should I get my whiteboard and we can put this out?
go to the next slide, and then we have a very clear view. This is pretty good, right, James?
Right, okay. So these numbers we're seeing here, this is going around the countryside. So this is the quarterly change in rent.
Yep.
So, Melbourne's 2.5%,
Yes.
Sydney's 2.3%,
Yep.
and sort of showing this is what the median rental levels are.
Medium rental price, and this is showing the nationwide is 2.6%, which we're talking about before, just for the quarter. As we know, from the end of the last year, when we're seeing like the coronavirus and all the pandemic is almost nearly to the end.
Yep.
And the market, especially for the rental market, it starts like recovering, like we're talking about the end of last week. The last quarter of the last year, 2021, we're seeing the rental 1.9% increase, which is amazing, which is very good. And this is the first quarter, we have an even more good number. This is 2.6%. And also I want to mention the things, this is medium rental for the major capital city. Let's have a look at Melbourne. This is number for the Melbourne. As the one of the biggest city around the country, I would say this is the most affordable price for the rental, for the renters.
Well, I was pretty much shocked, and I don't know whether it's coming through on the screen properly, but you can sort of see as a bar graph here, and $468 as the median weekly rent, yet our combined capitals is 522. So it's below the average there, yet it's the second biggest Sydney sort of there, and that's miles behind Sydney. I mean, we're talking, $150, $160 per week behind. So is that a permanent thing, or is this sort of where you're seeing the blue sky?
this is definitely what we're saying, like Melbourne is the most popular city around the country, even the world. But we have this, the rental is kind of attracting more and more people coming here. This is obviously like the big space to be moved up of the rental. For the investor, I think this is a good sign. If now we invest in property in Melbourne, this is like potentially you will receive very good rental in the next couple of years, because compared with the Sydney and the Melbourne, we can see the gap here. But we become, you know, eventually at the least we same size with Sydney and
So, you know, if we're looking at this, you know, we've talked about a lot how important it is to look, you know, not only macro and the big picture, but to really drill in to some of the more finer details. And I think what I'm sort of seeing here is, you know, it's not dissimilar to when I think back in high school and I was an aspiring rugby player and one of my coaches said, well, you can't get any worse. You've got a really good base to start from. And I think that's what I'm seeing here with Melbourne. You know, there is no way with the size of the state, you know, the amount of population that we've got, the growth, the students, the migration that we know that's coming back, that we should be below the average, and definitely not. I mean, look, we are basically the same as Adelaide. What are we here? We're cheaper than Hobart. We're way cheaper than Sydney. We're cheaper than Brisbane, cheaper than Canberra, cheaper than Darwin, cheaper than Perth. So in fact, are we on the bottom here, or what are we? Basically equal with Adelaide. You know, I mean, $4, what is it? So, you know, I think that's really important, and why some of you out there might be sort of saying, oh, but, you know, I don't know, it's tough. If you are an investor, it might be great to go to some of these other states, and there's many reasons why you might. But let me tell you, that is where I can see the biggest growth. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. Is it going to happen next week? Maybe, maybe not. But I tell you what, in the long run, it is definitely going to catch up. And, you know, these rents aren't going to come down, but we're definitely going to see, you know, where we think, you know, well above average growth in the Melbourne rents.
100%.
All right. What else have you got for us?
I also want to talk about individually the house and the unit for the rental market, because also, as we know, for the rental, basically you have two options. You rent a house or you rent a unit. Let's have a look at the difference for the unit and house. I want to mention those figures, like nationwide, the house increased 2.4% for the first quarter. The unit is 3%. This is what they mean. I mean, other things, I have a look, the capital, you know, the capital cities. Nationwide, the house 2.2 and the unit 3.1. So both for the capital city and the nationwide, the unit overtaking the house, the increase rate, which means lots of the migration, overseas students start coming back, because unit is their preferred the place for rental. Yeah. So, and also I want to have a mention, like have a look at Melbourne. The increase percentage is 3.9, it's almost a 4%, which means it's almost a double than the last year. I think last year we had a 1.8% increase for the unit in Melbourne. Now, this quarter, we almost a double. This is equivalent, we have about $16 more per week on the rent. Okay. So again, like I said, important to look behind some of these big picture statistics. And whilst we said, I think it was 2.6 or something for Melbourne, across it, when we break it down, you know, the houses, they're okay, but it's really the apartments that are seeing that big growth. And that's to be expected. You know, now what have we seen over the last 12 months? Sort of a similar trend, haven't we? Yeah. So, you know, here in Melbourne, 4.9% for houses, almost 7% for apartments. So it's really, really good, strong. And I guess for most people, Jack, on the line today, when they think about being an investor, it's typically investing in an apartment. You know, we ran through some of the numbers with Greg last week, and we know that freestanding homes don't tend to get the same return. Yep. And sure, some of them look pretty good. You know, I know there's plenty of regional property investors that have been telling us how amazing it's been the last 2 years. But really, that's where you've got to think for the long term. And that's where we're starting to see things change, you know, as the dream of living regional and never coming to the office is slowly starting to change, and people are realizing we're getting back to normal.
Now, I know I threw it in because I'm going to catch you off guard. I threw in one of the other graphs that really gave us the last 5-year trend in terms of the quarterly growth between houses and units. So what exactly is this telling us? And again, why is this so exciting for property investors?
I think is the first thing that attract my attention is here, the unit. Since the pandemic, we will definitely, this is actually the truth. The unit market, the rental has been hit terribly. So we're seeing from here down here. However, since last year, 2021, up to now, we'll see the very sharp increase, which is, I think it's almost like an 8 or 10% increase from the rental just in 1 year. So which means, of course, yeah, we've been hated from the COVID.
Yep.
The city market, the city apartment, like we really, staff, but it only takes 12 months. It's not even 12 months. Some area, even shorter time, will be recovery to the pre-COVID level. This is definitely, I think, because we still got a demand. We still got lots of the demand from the people from the interstate, overseas immigration, just because the pandemic, they cannot get into the country. This is not saying they don't want to come in. Physically, they cannot come in. Now, everything is open. We allow them to coming back. This is showing the trend. The city market, the unit market will back to the pre-COVID level.
All right. I want to leave you with one last thought as well before I let Jack have the final word. I think I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. And when we talk about regional Australia and the fact that everyone is moving to the regions, what we often tend to forget, and in line with what Jack started to see happening here, is that really the change in population in the regional areas was about all of those people that would traditionally move from regional Australia into the capital city. So, think of all the kids that have finished school and want to come for the job opportunities, the work opportunities. They couldn't travel. And to be fair, why would you leave where you're running around free to a lockdown city? We know Melbourne's been terrible the last 2 years. We spent more time inside our homes than ever before. But as that's changing, not only are you seeing external people coming into Melbourne, coming into the capital cities of Sydney and Melbourne, we're also seeing these locals that traditionally over the last 2 years would have come to study, would have come to work, would have come to have fun, haven't. They're going to start coming. So we're really going to start all of a sudden seeing from where we had massive vacancies to all of a sudden no vacancies and rents really starting to grow and people complaining again. And you know what? Property managers actually getting the job done and going home early because they don't have any vacancy.
Yes, yes.
All right, good. Any last words you want to give to our listeners?
I think this is, to be my surprise, I think it's just within the 12 months, the rental, in terms of the rental, everything performing very well. I mean, we, like you said, James, before, we have the vacancy, lots of the apartment be vacant. Now we have 0 vacancy. The people looking to rent, but it can't find a property. This is, to my surprise, I believe this trend will keep continuing, and the rental market will getting better and better. So for those people, investors, they worry about the rental, I don't think they need to worry about it. Everything is back to normal.
Okay, good. All right, well, grab a seat. I'm going to bring in Greg and Lucas as well. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different. As I said to you, there were 3 key pillars that you need to focus on. And the first one is, how do you find the right home? Now, for a lot of you, you'll think you've got this covered, and maybe you do. But I want to just run through, relatively quickly. The guys are going to chime in when they think I've made a mistake, or give you some examples as to why it is so important and some of the things that you need to think about and the strategies that you can perhaps apply to make sure that you're not falling into any of the traps. So the 3 pillars, as I said, we're going to talk about pillar number 1, find. So rule number 1, Greg, is what?
Location.
Rule number 2?
Location.
Rule number 3?
James is always right.
Thank you, good. Also known as location. So that man's getting a pay rise after we're finished here, but we've all heard it. It's location, location, location. So whenever you're thinking about finding a home, you've got to think about location, because that is the number one thing. You can't change that. You know, don't get swayed by a fancy bathroom, a new kitchen, because you can change that in your home. You can't pick up your home and move it to another location. Okay, despite what you've seen on TV shows and big semi-trailers taking it down the road, location is fixed. So really, really important you think about that. Now, there are a few other rules. So what should you be considering? Well, of course, the first thing is location. The second one is finance. Now, that's a pillar in its own right, but really, really important that you understand your budget and what you can afford, because you can't find the right property if you've got champagne dreams and a beer budget. Okay, you've got to match those two things together. You've got to think about the physical aspects. So, you know, is it the right size? Is it the right configuration? You know, what are some of the aspects? Do you need to do work to it and so forth? All of those things are important, but you've got to get the location right. You've got to make sure that you've got your budget and your finance set up. And then there's emotional things. So, you know, we often tell you, and I think Greg was teaching us, and I think Lucas also ran through recently about investors, and you can't get too emotionally attached, but there are emotional considerations that you've got to think about, because that is important, whether it be a home that you're going to live in or a home for a tenant of yours. There's certain things that people think of, and you've got to sort of put yourself in the shoes of your tenant as well, and think about how it makes you feel, right? Apparently, it's good to have emotions. I'm devoid of them, but I think, Greg, you'll tell me it is nice to feel good in a home. And
Absolutely. You got to, when you walk in, you know, you got to, it's got to feel right.
Yep.
And sometimes you walk, again, emotion.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, so when we think of those four key things, and then we think about how can we actually consider those. Now, this is not exhaustive, but these are some of the key strategies that we've used time and time again, and have really helped people to narrow down and drill into how they can do it. So the first one is what we call smell the asset. Now, this is all about the location. You've got to go out there, you've got to live, breathe it, feel it, check it, test it. So if you already live there, then great, you probably already know it, and you can focus in more on that particular street. But, you know, Greg likes to go to the local cafe. You know, he likes to go have a look what's around. Lucas likes to look at the nightlife and enjoy, find, you know, the sights and sounds. You know, Jack likes to go and have a look at the neighbours and so forth. All of these things are important, because ultimately, when you're looking at an open home, real estate agents, these guys are all real estate agents. They pick the best time, the best angle, the best light, everything to be perfect conditions. In fact, if you've got Mrs. Mangle next door, they'll even pay Mrs. Mangle to go away for an hour there, right? They'll take her out to lunch, whatever it is. So you need to go beyond just that open home and get to know the location, because remember, rule number one, location. Rule number two, location. Rule number three, location. Really, really critical, because you cannot change that. So make sure you get out there, you live it, you feel it, and see, does that make sense for your lifestyle? And is it what you thought it was when you went to the open home? The second one, picture the perfect home. Now, the reason why this is important, and it's often something that you need to do before you go out and you start looking, you need to work out what must you have in a home. What would be nice to have and what doesn't really matter. Now, the reason why it's important to do this before is that we get swayed. Again, these real estate agents, they're crafty buggers. They'll convince you that you need a big pool. They'll convince you that you need this kitchen. They'll convince you that you need a butler's pantry. Hey, guess what? I don't cook. The kitchen doesn't even get used at my house, so I don't need all of this fancy stuff, you know, and that's where you can really get swayed. And, you know, I know, Greg, we've talked about this a few times, that people start telling you, you know, you've met with them, you see them again a couple of months later, they still haven't found, and they've said, oh, no, I must have this, this, this. And you say, but last week you told me this.
We often get people coming into the apartments, and you actually can see that they actually don't know what they want. They're coming in there just to look around, and then you go, well, what do you actually want? And as you say, so know what you want before you start looking.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you can't change as you go through and realize what you want, but it's something about having a bit of a discipline, and it's written down on a bit of paper. It can be a sock, it can be grandma's homework, it can be whatever it is, but something you can refer back to and say, well, I've now gone from something I said I didn't really need to now that's essential. Have I just been swayed by pretty pictures and looking at things, or is that really what I need? Budget, okay? As I said, that's a whole pillar in its own right, but really understand the difference between a hard cap for your budget versus where you can stretch to. So, it's important when we talk about budget, Lucas, I know some people come in and say, this is my budget, and you're showing them 1 bedrooms, and then all of a sudden they want to see a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom, and before you know it, you sold them a $5 million penthouse. That's where I guess people are very different between that's the maximum I can spend versus this is what I would like to spend. So that's something that you've got to really think about and understand as well.
Yeah, look, 100% right. A lot of people come in and then they realize what they had written down on a piece of paper, and when they actually visit and walk through the right property, price all of a sudden becomes secondary.
So I was just checking, is those blue lights on? Hopefully the guys' voices are booming like mine. I don't think the microphone was on, and that was my job to check. So hopefully that's been heard. All right, number 4, bigger isn't always better. Okay, now, just because we think having a big home would be better, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, more space, it isn't always better. It does take up a hell of a lot more time. And do you really need these spaces? Or are they spaces that you can use as shared spaces? So later, the guys are going to run through some different options and why some of these shared spaces can be more beneficial to you and better suited. But just remember, bigger isn't always better. Location is far more important. Think about how you live in that home and your lifestyle. Focus on the fundamentals. Now, this is almost the number 1 strategy you could think about. So, when we talk about fundamentals, this is where you've got to think about things like, I don't like that carpet. That can be changed, that can be replaced. But things like the number of bedrooms, its aspect, how it's facing, its view, the location, they're all fundamental. You cannot change those, but you can change carpet. I don't like the kitchen, it's a bit old. You can change that. You really got to focus in on those fundamentals, the key things that you can't change, because that is what's going to make the difference between finding the right home, slaying that problem that we talked about at the start, versus feeling trapped and unhappy with what you've done. Plan for the long term, okay? I think, Greg, you and I talked about how to keep your first home as an investment property the other week.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that's really thinking about planning for the long term. So, not only for how your family and your life might change and grow, and often you can't afford your perfect family home on day 1. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying stop, but just think about the long term and think about going to it in mind of either keeping this home forever as something that you live in, or keeping it forever and flipping it into an investment property. Now, it may not work out that way, but there's things like, you can get caught up on putting your own personal touches, having, pink walls and lights, but that doesn't work for investors.
And a lot of the time, as you're saying, be sensible. See it as a stepping stone. If you can't afford that very big property, know that this is a stepping stone to grow into something else. And as you say, keep it then potentially as an investment property, grow your wealth, and allow that property to get you into the next level where you want to be.
Okay. Next one, don't put your expectations too high. Now, as a father, I will always tell my daughters to expect the best from everything, expect to be treated like they deserve. So hopefully they're not listening. It is school holidays. Maybe they're listening because they love their dad so much. Probably not. But it is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should settle. But you've got to be realistic and don't expect too much. It's a factor of budget. It's a factor of location. It's a factor of the type of property. It's all of these things together. You've got to really set your expectations at the correct level. Otherwise, you're never going to do anything and you're going to be continually disappointed. Now, Lucas says that all the time to me. He says, set your expectations. Don't go too high. I don't want to have to sell too much this month. Just be happy with 1 or 2 sales. But, that's something that often, you guys have people come in and they're looking for this big home, multiple bedrooms, bathrooms, views, facilities, everything, but their budget's just not in match. And, I think you asked them how long you've been doing this, and you once said, I've been looking since 1993 or something.
True, close to that, true. But, and again, James, this is where on piece of paper, things look totally different than when you actually walk through. It's not, almost every single home I've sold, it's not about the size. People are surprised when they walk in and see a livable space, the right layout. All of a sudden they were looking for double the size, but they said, this is perfect for us.
Okay, good. Picture living in it. So remember I said at the start, picture your perfect home. Picture living in it. This is where the emotional things come into play. Now, this isn't about making yourself feel good. It isn't about necessarily just saying, wow, this is perfect. It's also thinking about why you think this is the right home for you. So, you know, if you're set on a particular place because it has a home cinema, picture how you're going to live in there and picture yourself using that home cinema. Because maybe you hate movies, maybe you're deaf, maybe you're blind, maybe you love going out to the cinema, whatever it is, it's really, really important that you picture that, you understand it, so you can work out, are you just being swayed by the look and the feel and so forth, but it's not actually something that's important to you. So remember I said you've got to know your must-haves, nice to have, and doesn't really matter. Then when you think you've found the right place, go back and imagine how you're going to live in there and compare that to whether they actually matter. And that's some way that can really go down, whilst it's an emotional part of thinking how you're going to live there, it's also using that more rational part of your brain to understand that emotional feeling that I'm feeling, is it actually something that is important to me and I must have? Lastly, I know you'll all be shocked by this. Prices go up, prices go down. The market goes in cycles. It goes up, it goes down, it will chop and change. There is no perfect time to buy a home. There is just the right time at the right time. So what I mean by that is, don't worry whether you think, oh, I've got to wait because prices are going to go down, because prices go up again. You know, we talk about thinking for the long term. What you've got to do is make sure you focus in on those fundamentals that we talked about. Think about all of these strategies so that you're getting the right home for you at this particular time. You know, we talk about it all the time, that we say it's not about timing the market, it's time in the market. And that's what's really, really important there, because you'll never, ever pick the perfect time. You know, there's nothing worse than thinking, I'm going to wait till prices are going down, I think, and then they keep going down more, okay? Because you're only going to feel bad because you didn't buy when you wanted it because you were waiting for prices, or waiting for the prices to go down and they go up, okay? If that's your strategy, it's fundamentally flawed, because you are never, ever going to get anything done. Okay.
Can I add
Yes,
something?
of course you can, Greg.
Okay. When we talk about also pricing going up and down, you'll probably find when we talk about that, we're talking about rectification. Sometimes we'll get prices spiking and then they'll be leveling out going. But ultimately, if you look at the graph, as you said, time in the market, the graph over the longer term is that. It continually goes up with dips. So if you're waiting for it to do that, it's not going to happen. As James said, get in when it's right for you. That's when you get in, because in the long term, it's going to be the right investment.
Okay, these are a couple of mistakes. I think most of them we've touched on, but I just want to highlight a few key mistakes that people make. Not knowing what they can afford. Okay, simple. You've got to know what you can afford, otherwise you'll go nowhere. Lacking vision. You know, really, really important, as I said, once you know the location is right, you've got to understand, be able to have that vision and say, well, you know what? This is where I'm going to live. How much time am I going to spend? You know, how good is this going to be able to walk to work, or, you know, walk down to the beach and have a swim? Whatever it is, you've got to be able to have that vision and understand and picture yourself living in there. Overlooking important flaws. Okay. Don't think that everything is perfect. All right. Sometimes we get so caught up by, oh, wow, how amazing is this pool? We forget we're living on the railway line. Okay. Now, if you're deaf, maybe that's okay. But for most people, they've got to come to terms with the fact that you've got a train coming past every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, 24 hours a day through the middle of the night, freight trains, passenger trains, whatever it is. Don't overlook those flaws because you get swayed by other things. But just as importantly, don't let yourself get caught by what you think are big flaws that aren't really. You know, remember what I said, a little thing like a kitchen, sure, it's not cheap, but you can change that over time. So don't let that stop you, as opposed to things like a train line that's not going to move. You know, a busy road the fact that you might have a building right in front of you that you can't see anything. They're not going to change. Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. What do I mean by this? Don't listen to a word Greg says, only listen to Lucas. No, I'm joking. What I mean by this is understand your location, understand who lives there, understand what they're looking for. So remember I said you've got to go and smell the asset, you've got to get to know it and really feel that it's right for you, but also understand the rest of the people that live there. So if you do decide to keep that home long term, you don't end up buying a 5-bedroom home in an area that's densely populated with students that are looking for 1-bedroom studios, maybe 2-bedroom apartments. You've got to understand that so that even if you do decide to make that decision, you know that you've got a limited market. Preferably, you make sure that you get the right location and the right type of home for that location. All right, anything else you guys want to add to this before we move through?
Point actually, because I've spoken with a lot of people.
I know it's just because I told everyone not to listen to Greg.
So
You
there
like it.
you've got me going now. Look, I've spoken with a lot of people, and it's surprising, like you said, it's very important to know where you're living, because a lot of the people say, "Now, you know what? I was going to buy a property, didn't realize they've got a hotel attached to it, or they're running, you know, Airbnb, like the whole building, like 30 levels." And they don't like the wild partying people that go there for the weekend. You know, they want a different lifestyle. So it's important to understand something might look good on the outside, but find out exactly as much information as you can about it, because it's very important if you're, especially if you're planning to live there long term.
Okay, good. Now, that's how you find the right home. What I thought we would do is give you some live examples. So if you've thought about those strategies, you're thinking, okay, yeah, oh, what does it mean? I want to just talk here. Greg's got a current home for sale at the moment. And Greg, you know, tell us a little bit about this home and some of the key things why you love this so much.
Well, a lot of people, as soon as they think about going into apartment living, they think it's going to be too small. I'm never going to fit in there. It's not going to happen. When you look at something like this, you look at the design, how cleverly it is designed. When you look at that sort of stuff, you'll see a lot of cupboard space, bedrooms a decent size, bedrooms split by a bathroom. So you've got privacy within the 2 bedrooms. You've got windows in both, recessed cupboard space, island benches. So you can have a table or no table, and then you've got a beautiful living space. So
where do we put the drum kit, most importantly?
I was about when Lucas was talking about making sure you know what's happening, make sure that there's not someone that has a metal band that rehearses in that building. Okay, so the drum kit, well, we can put that downstairs somewhere. Okay, but generally speaking, we don't want someone with a drum kit here. But in terms of design, you can actually, if you look for the right, like this one, that's why I particularly like it. 2 big bedrooms, split, plenty of cupboard space, lots of bench top space, balconies. It's just an awesome layout, but within a small space, maximizing the usage.
Okay, so Greg, tell us 2 bed, 1 bath plus a car. What's the price of this?
$659.
Okay, seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
You know, I touched on before, if you're a first home buyer and there's a lot of price caps with those government incentives, that's within all of those price caps. You can get all of those, which is great.
James, I want to put that into context. I always tell my buyers when I say to people, before they say, what's the price? I said, very important to look at what is the price per square meter. Now, typically, you look at pricing can be 10,000 up to 15,000 a square meter. Here, in an apartment like this with great finishes, well under 9,000, that's very, very important. Look at the price per square meter.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
getting value.
Yeah.
All right, Lucas, you got another listing here. Quickly tell us a little bit about it. Why should people be not listening to Greg and listening to you?
Because it's an amazing apartment. Thank you, Greg. Look, this is a beautiful apartment. So it's quite spacious. The design, again, it all does come down to design, because I've had people that were looking for, I need an apartment that has to be at least 100 square meters. And I say, really, is it just you? Oh yeah, just me and this is a partner that visits here and there. Then they walk in and they say, wow, this is an amazing design. You know, there's not weird angles. There's not pillars in the middle of the room that take up space. I've actually, an example last week, I showed that property on Thursday, and the people live 2 buildings next door, and they said our apartment is much bigger, but this feels more of a home. This feels so much good, like it's usable space. It's very cleverly
Big
designed.
is not better.
It's not, exactly. So it's all about the design. They said that the bedrooms are very good size. I love how you've got an actual study. You know, so it's all those things that make a difference. And then again, you know, when we say look where you live as well, it's not just the apartment itself, but the building that you choose in the apartment. And I'm not sure if you're going to go into it later about amenities.
I think I've got some pictures here.
Yeah, and this is it. And you know, when I take people through the building, it's very exciting because everybody's like wow. And I keep on saying, but wait a minute, we've got 3 levels of amenities for me. This is a building that keeps on giving and giving and giving. So you know, you take them through. There's a pool, the spa, the steam room, the gym, the private lounge rooms, the outdoor sitting and barbecue area. All those things. It's not just the amenities, but imagine how many thousands of dollars you save by
Greg,
having
is this where we're
everything.
putting the band?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's it.
But so we can have private band sessions, metal, they have head banging, and it's beautiful because it's actually sealed, so you can't see what's going in there.
Yeah.
That's it. So you know, you can save a lot of money and time. Everybody is time poor these days, right? So people want the ability to, within the building, go to the pool or go and have a workout or relax outdoor and have a glass of wine if that's what you want to do. So almost everybody I've met is time poor. So having this kind of first-class amenities within a building, you know, it's really important. It's a huge plus.
All right, good. Now I can see we've gone way over time, so I'll just wrap it up there. But you know what the guys have just touched on there, you know, as Lucas was just talking about being time poor and thinking about it. Remember, that's the 3rd pillar: manage, understanding your time. Are there certain things, for example, how good does that pool look? But guess what? I've got my own pool. I've got to clean it. You've got to put salt in it, chlorine. You've got to put the acid. It's always going, it goes green, it's blue, it's purple. Then it's short on water. Then it's too hot, it's too cold. It's a bloody nightmare, okay? And I love it, but I'd love to have someone else do it because you know what? My kids don't even want to swim in it anymore. By the time I do all this and I jump in and I'm by myself and I think, oh, great, that was really worth it. So, you know, it's things like that, managing your time efficiently, talking about the space. You know, we touched on, you know, areas like these, shared communal spaces, big outdoor areas that you can go and spread your wings for the few times a year that you want to do it and then really focus inside your own 4 walls. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. As I said, I want to just point out the path to how you move forward. So if you got value out of today, don't just leave it there. You know, understand those pillars and really go and put that in so that you don't suffer from the problem. How are you going to do that? Well, the way I see it is you've got a choice. You can either do one of 3 things, okay? But what you really need to do, you need to have a plan and understand what you're going to do to be able to move forward. Now, what I know most of you are going to do is you're going to do nothing, okay? Now, I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean this in a bad way. For some of you, that's okay, because maybe you're out there, you're killing it, you know, everything's working well for you. But just remember, if you don't make a change, don't expect a different result. So if you're like that customer of Lucas's that have been looking since the early 90s, and you really do want to get a home, you need to make a change. So what I hope you do as a bare minimum, take on board what we've discussed today, have a think about those insights, you know, where we've really tried to explain it more to you, and go out there and do it yourself. But what I hope some of you will do, in fact, I hope all of you do, is you take the alternative path and you let us help you and you do it with us. So how does that look? Well, before I tell you how it looks I just want to make sure that you understand not everyone is going to be the right fit for this, because you do need to be prepared to put in some time and effort. You do need to be prepared to actually understand the concept of actionable knowledge and want to build that database. You want to actually take that action and be prepared to take those steps so that you're not looking for another 2 years, another 5 years, another 10 years. You know, even if you've got your own home, you're really being able to up-level it and get the most and maximize the value out of it. So if that sounds like you and you're still listening to us, then it probably is you. How can we do that for you? Well, I don't know a lot about you. You know, perhaps I've got your name, perhaps I've got your email. I've seen a lot of friendly faces here on the screen, on my computer just off screen here, and that's great. But I didn't really see a lot of people that I know. So we don't know a lot about you. You know, the rest of the guys maybe have met you before. But with that in mind, the best and easiest way that we can move forward and can guarantee to deliver some value is for us to meet up one-on-one with you. So what does that look like? Well, it can happen in many different ways. We can do it actually face-to-face, like the good old days. You can come in, we'll buy you a coffee. You can do it over Zoom. We can just have a phone call. We can do it on WhatsApp, WeChat, any different methodology or communication method that you want. But ultimately, we want to focus in with you for about 15 to 20 minutes, really get to understand where you are in the journey, what have been the stumbling blocks, and where you're really hoping to get to, so that we can identify which one of our businesses or which one of our focus areas can really help you deliver on creating that home for you. So, you know, if you're an investor, it might be helping you with the property management side. It might be helping you find that first investment property. The other end of the spectrum, if you're a first-home buyer, better understanding the grants and the incentives that are out there, helping you apply for those, getting your finance, or anything in between. So all I can say to you is that I'm asking for you to commit 15 to 20 minutes of your day. And in exchange, I guarantee that you will leave that session with actionable insights that you can implement immediately. Whether you decide to work with us or not, you'll have something you can immediately implement and start to see those results. So it's risk-free. And realistically, 15 to 20 minutes, it takes that long to walk to your local coffee shop, chat to the barista, wait while he makes the coffee, and walk back home. So it's not a lot of time that we're asking from, and I'm giving you that guarantee that you'll have some action out there. So if that sounds good to you and you want to do that, it's really simple. There's 3 ways you can do it. Jump into the chat on Zoom, and there should be the link there. If you're on Facebook, there should also be the link in the comments. If your web browser is logged into Zoom, you should be redirected to that booking page. Or lastly, if you've registered using your email address, I'll send you a follow-up email after this so you can check your calendar and book the most appropriate time. Now, before I let you go, I just want to quickly touch on a holiday that I had in July last year. I went to Hamilton Island, great part of the world, beautiful place to go in the middle of a Melbourne winter. It was warm, it was great. You know, have a look how good that is. That is my oldest daughter, Isabella. You can see the joy on her face. Now, this photo almost didn't happen. So I think it was on day 2, and Isabella said to me, "Dad, I'd love to wake up, see the sunrise, go to the top of that mountain, take some photos, and just spend a bit of time enjoying the countryside." So what did I do? I booked, or I didn't book, I put my alarm on, and I thought, right, we'll get up at about 4:45. It was early, and it's not really what I wanted to do on a holiday, but I thought it's what she wants to do. Let's get out there and enjoy it and do it. But it didn't happen almost, because when the alarm went off, what did I do? I did what we're all used to, and I hit the snooze button. So 8 minutes later, it started going off again. And I did, again, what we've all done, and I hit the stop button, and I said, that's it. I don't want to wake up. I can't be bothered. Let's just leave it, and we'll go another day. But before I went back to sleep, I thought, no, you know what? She wants to do it. I jumped up, we ran to the top, we got this photo, we had this amazing experience, and I'm really, really glad I did it. The reason for telling you this story is what I learned from this is that sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. You have to do things when you don't really feel like doing it. You need to take action, because if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't have had this great experience. Those of you with young kids will know they're only young for such a short stage, and this is a really, really great memory that I've got. So if you want to be like me, make those great memories, enjoy those experiences, and actually make things happen, then you need to take the action. So if you haven't already, jump on and book one of those sessions with someone from my team, because I guarantee you, as I said, you'll walk away with value and something you can implement immediately. All right, that's it. I know we've gone way over time, so thank you for everyone that stayed on the line today. As always, I appreciate that you had plenty of other things you could be doing, and that instead you chose to dedicate your time with us. So from me, and all the guys here on the panel today, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully next week after the Easter break, or the week after, the month after, or sometime later this year. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.